Let's be brutally honest. When a woman starts to distance herself from you, you feel it before she even says a word. Her voice softens, her replies shrink, her presence feels colder, and suddenly you're standing in the middle of emotional silence, wondering what went wrong. You scroll back through old texts trying to find the exact moment things changed. You ask yourself, did I do something wrong? Did I lose her interest? Did she meet someone else? And the worst part? You don't even realize that your reaction to her distance is often what drives her even farther away. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. When a woman begins to pull back, most men panic. They chase, they question, they overthink, and in that emotional storm, they lose the very power that once made her drawn to them. What used to make her admire you, your calm confidence, your self-respect, your masculine stillness, gets replaced with fear and anxiety. And once she senses that shift, she doesn't feel secure around you anymore. She feels your need, not your strength. You see, female psychology operates on emotional polarity. A woman is magnetically drawn to a man who doesn't need her to validate his worth. When she feels you're centered, that your life continues with or without her, that's when her attraction deepens. But when you start chasing her reassurance, she subconsciously loses respect. And without respect, attraction dies, slowly, quietly, and painfully. When she distances herself, she's not always testing you maliciously. Sometimes it's instinctual. Women withdraw when their emotions feel uncertain. They want to see what kind of man you become when they pull away. Do you lose your composure, or do you stay grounded? Do you demand attention, or do you lead with calm detachment? Because in her world, your reaction reveals your emotional strength far more than your words ever could. If you've ever noticed a woman go from affectionate and loving to suddenly cold and distracted, don't rush to fix it. The more you try to close the gap with overcommunication, the more she feels you don't understand her language. Because distance for a woman isn't always about space. It's about energy. When her energy feels suffocated, she needs to retreat to breathe. And if you chase during that retreat, she starts associating your presence with pressure, not peace. Most men destroy their chances by trying to force closeness before the woman has emotionally reset. They text more, call more, post things online to get her attention, thinking it will remind her of what she's losing. But what actually happens is the opposite. She feels you slipping into desperation, and her instinct tells her, he's not the same man I was drawn to. So what do you do instead? You do the hardest thing a man can do when his emotions are screaming for answers. You wait in silence. You breathe. You let the space exist without trying to fill it. You focus on your world, not hers. You let your silence speak for you. Because your stillness communicates what words can't, that your value isn't negotiable, and your life doesn't revolve around her approval. That silence unsettles her more than any text ever could. She starts to wonder, why isn't he chasing me? Why does he seem okay without me? That confusion reignites curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of attraction. You flip the dynamic, you become the emotional prize again, and that's when her distance turns into pursuit. But you can't fake this energy. You can't pretend to be calm while secretly spiraling. You have to actually become the man who's not afraid to lose her because he's finally found himself. That's the foundation of reverse female psychology. It's not manipulation, it's emotional mastery. The man who can remain composed while his heart aches is the man every woman silently respects, and eventually regrets losing. When a woman pulls away, most men think the solution is to do more. More affection, more communication, more proof that they care. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men never learn. Attraction doesn't respond to more effort. It responds to different energy. Because the more you try to win her back, the more she subconsciously feels that she's already won. You're confirming her position of emotional power. And that's where everything flips. In that moment, she becomes the chooser, and you become the one waiting to be chosen. And that shift kills desire. Women are drawn to men who lead emotionally, not men who chase emotional stability through them. So when she begins to drift, your job isn't to pull her closer. Your job is to step back into emotional control, to reclaim your frame. That means you stop reacting, stop pleading, and stop checking her every move for signs of care. Instead, you remind yourself that attraction is built through mystery, not availability. The more predictable you become, the less she feels the thrill that made her curious about you in the first place. You have to understand something deep about female psychology. A woman's emotions are tied to her sense of uncertainty, not insecurity, but curiosity. When she doesn't fully understand where she stands with you, her emotions come alive. That's why she felt so drawn to you in the beginning, because you weren't an open book. You had depth, mystery, and direction. You were living your life, not waiting for her to validate it. When you reverse that, when you make her the center of your emotional world, you unknowingly destroy the same dynamic that once made her fall for you. You make her feel emotionally safe, but not emotionally excited. And women don't fall in love with safety alone. They fall in love with the man who makes them feel something real. So here's what you do when she starts distancing herself. You stop chasing connection and you start building attraction through silence, progress, and presence. You let her feel your absence. You don't punish her, you don't play games, you simply stop overextending yourself where energy isn't being reciprocated. Because when you stop trying to prove your worth, she starts to feel it. Every time she checks her phone and sees no message from you, her mind starts to wander. Every time she wonders what you're doing, who you're with, and why you're not reaching out, you're planting the seeds of curiosity again. And curiosity is the mother of attraction. That silence isn't emptiness. It's psychological gravity. It pulls her back toward you without words. But here's where most men fail. They try to weaponize silence while secretly obsessing behind the scenes. They watch her stories, analyze her posts, talk about her to friends, but that's not detachment. That's hidden desperation. True detachment means you redirect all that emotional energy back into yourself. You hit the gym, improve your finances, focus on your goals, surround yourself with purpose. You remind yourself that you are the source of your own value, not her attention. And here's what happens when you do that. She feels it. Women are emotionally intuitive. When your energy shifts from anxious to grounded, she notices. She senses that you've detached, that your emotional center is no longer orbiting her. And that's when her distance starts to bother her more than it bothers you. That's when she begins to test again. A random text, a subtle like, a memory she brings up out of nowhere. And if you respond too eagerly, you kill the tension again. But if you stay composed, calm, and light, she starts chasing the energy she lost. She begins to reinvest emotionally, not because you forced her to, but because she feels pulled toward you again. Reverse female psychology isn't manipulation, it's alignment. It's understanding that attraction flows toward strength, not neediness. The man who can walk away is the man she runs after. The man who respects himself enough to stay silent in chaos is the one she can't forget in peace. When you learn to stop reacting to her distance, you become what every woman secretly craves: emotional stability wrapped in mystery. And in a world full of noise, that's the loudest presence you can have. When a woman distances herself, it's not the silence that hurts a man the most, it's the confusion. You replay every interaction, every word, every tiny detail, trying to pinpoint the reason she started slipping away. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men refuse to face. She didn't pull away because of one wrong text or a single argument. She pulled away because her emotional perception of you changed. Attraction for a woman isn't just built on looks or words, it's built on emotional rhythm. When she first met you, your energy had movement, you had purpose. You carried yourself like a man who had a life outside of her. You were the challenge she couldn't quite figure out, and that made her feel alive. But over time, you started giving her all of your focus. You made her your purpose. You made her attention your oxygen. And the moment that happened, she subconsciously lost emotional tension. You have to understand this. Attraction for a woman thrives in uncertainty, not chaos. But emotional tension that makes her wonder, what is he thinking? Why isn't he chasing? Why does he seem so calm while I'm confused? That's the psychological tension that reignites attraction. The mistake most men make is thinking that being nice, consistent, and available will make her stay. But emotional attraction doesn't live in predictability. It lives in polarity. A woman doesn't want a man who's cold or cruel. She wants a man whose energy she can feel, but not fully control. She wants emotional contrast, a man who can show warmth, but won't crumble when she pulls back. So how do you trigger that emotional pull again? You let her feel the space between you. You don't fill it with words, reassurance, or apologies. You let silence do what explanations can't. Because here's the paradox of female psychology. When you stop trying to close the gap, she starts feeling the emptiness of it. She begins to question why your energy feels different, why you're not reacting the same way, why her usual methods of getting your attention no longer work. That confusion breeds emotional reflection. Suddenly, she's the one replaying old memories, scrolling through your pictures, wondering if she misread your worth. And here's where the power shifts. When you stay centered during her withdrawal, she's forced to feel the emotional consequences of her distance. You're no longer feeding her attention while she pulls away. Instead, she's left alone with silence, and silence is the mirror that exposes emotional truth. She starts realizing she misses your presence, not because you chased her, but because you didn't. But don't misunderstand this. Your goal isn't to play games, it's to rebuild polarity. You do that by recentering your focus, get back into your mission, your health, your discipline. Post less, live more, speak less, move sharper. Because when you start glowing in silence, she notices. Not through what you say, but through the quiet confidence that radiates from a man who doesn't beg for connection. He attracts it naturally. The energy of detachment is magnetic. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. It says, I want you, but I don't need you. And that's the energy that pulls her curiosity like gravity. Because when she feels that you're emotionally grounded, she knows you're not like the rest. You're not dependent on her affection to define your value. She might test you again. She might withdraw further just to see if the old you returns. But when you stay calm, consistent, and emotionally neutral, she begins to see your strength in a way words could never prove. She feels safe and intrigued at the same time, and that combination is addictive. So when she distances herself, stop asking what you did wrong. Start asking what you stopped doing right. You stopped living in your purpose. You stopped being unpredictable. You stopped holding your emotional frame. Bring that energy back, and she'll feel the pull she can't explain, the one that reminds her why she was drawn to you in the first place. Because at the end of the day, it's not her distance that decides the outcome. It's your reaction to it. Most men lose a woman in the silence. A few men make her fall in love again through it. There's a quiet moment that happens before a woman begins to come back. You might not see it, you might not hear it, but you'll feel it. It's that shift in the air, when she starts noticing your absence more than she used to notice your presence. When your silence starts echoing louder than your words ever did. That's when the real reversal begins. See, female psychology runs deeper than emotion. It's driven by perception. When you were chasing her, she saw herself as the prize. But when you stopped chasing, something subtle shifted in her subconscious. She started realizing you weren't reacting the way most men would. You weren't begging for clarity, you weren't falling apart, and you weren't trying to prove your worth. You simply disappeared into your own focus, and that silence creates curiosity first, then regret. Because what a woman truly respects in a man isn't control, it's restraint. The ability to feel deeply, but not let emotion dictate behavior. The man who can sit with uncertainty without losing his center becomes unforgettable. That's the moment she starts replaying everything in her mind, the tone of your voice, the way you used to look at her, the confidence in your walk. She starts comparing, and comparison is what reignites emotional attachment. When a woman compares another man to you and realizes she felt safer, calmer, and more drawn when she was with you, that's when she starts to reattach. But it doesn't happen because you chased her back. It happens because your energy stayed disciplined. This is why emotional discipline is the ultimate form of attraction. Every man can desire a woman, but few can desire her while staying patient, silent, and calm in uncertainty. That balance between strength and control is what her emotions respond to. You didn't need to say anything. She felt it. Here's the thing most men miss. The The moment you stop chasing, the woman's emotional world begins to reorganize itself. At first, she'll rationalize the distance. She'll tell herself she just needed space, that maybe you were too intense, or she lost interest. But when you don't break the silence, when you don't chase, her brain starts to question her own story, because her emotions aren't finding closure, they're finding confusion. And that confusion turns into emotional tension. She'll scroll through your feed, she'll wonder what you're doing, who you're talking to, whether you've moved on. That thought that maybe you're truly gone is what shakes her emotionally awake. It's not your words that pull her back, it's her own curiosity colliding with your emotional distance. And when she reaches out, and she will, don't rush to fill the space with validation. Be warm, but not eager. Calm, but not cold. Respond, but don't over-engage. The point isn't to make her feel rejected. The point is to show that your value was never dependent on her attention. When she senses that your peace isn't negotiable, she begins to see you differently. She begins to respect you again. Because here's the truth. Women don't stay with the man who makes them feel loved the most. They stay with the man they respect the most. Love without respect turns into comfort. Respect without love turns into distance. But love and respect, that's what creates lasting attraction. And respect is earned in silence, not in speeches. The man who knows his worth doesn't need to chase to prove it. His energy speaks before he does. His absence stings more than his words could ever heal. And that's the man who always has the power. Not because he plays games, but because he understands emotional gravity. So when she finally starts to come back, don't see it as your victory. See it as your test. Because the real challenge isn't getting her attention again, it's keeping your composure once you do. Here's the hard truth most men never want to hear. Getting her back isn't the victory. Keeping your power once she returns, that's where most men fail. Because when she comes back, you'll feel that surge of validation, that emotional high that says, I did it. She misses me. She sees my value again. But if you fall back into the same energy that made her pull away, the cycle will repeat. She'll drift again. And next time, it'll hurt even deeper. So how do you break the pattern forever? You build from strength, not from fear. You stop seeing her return as a reward and start seeing it as confirmation that your energy, your silence, and your composure worked. That means you don't abandon your purpose just because she's back in your life. You don't make her your mission. You make her part of your world, not the center of it. Because when a woman senses that you're emotionally grounded, that you can feel deeply but stay detached from outcome, that's when she begins to trust you again. Not because you promised her anything, but because your presence feels safe. The kind of safety that only comes from a man who isn't emotionally dependent on anyone else to feel complete. Here's the secret that no dating coach will ever tell you. Women aren't drawn to men who need them. They're drawn to men who make them feel something they can't get anywhere else. A rare mix of emotional depth and quiet dominance. A man who listens but doesn't beg. Who feels love but doesn't lose himself in it. Who's kind but unbreakably strong. So when she comes back, you don't rush in with open arms like you've been waiting for her approval. You meet her energy where it stands. You allow connection to rebuild slowly, naturally. You let her earn her way back into your emotional space, not through punishment, but through patience. You become the calm in her chaos, because now she sees the difference between the man who once chased her and the man who now leads himself. The truth is, the most powerful man in any relationship is the one who's not afraid of losing it, because he understands that his peace, his purpose, and his masculinity are not negotiable. When you live by that principle, she feels it. It's in your tone, in your posture, in the way you look at her and the way you carry yourself when she's not around. That confidence doesn't need to be spoken, it's felt. And that's the kind of energy women remember for years, because you didn't chase her, you challenged her. You showed her that real love isn't about control, it's about respect. You taught her that your silence carries meaning. And most importantly, you reminded her of something she forgot, that she's not in love with your words, she's in love with your essence. Now here's the part that will separate you from every other man she's ever met. Keep evolving. Keep growing even after she returns, because a woman who respects you will always match your pace, but a woman who loses respect will always test your boundaries, and your calm response to those tests will define everything. Remember, she doesn't fall for the man who tries to convince her. She falls for the man who quietly embodies what she's been searching for. The man who could walk away at any moment, not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to stay anywhere he isn't valued. That's real strength. That's real masculinity. And that's how you make her chase you, not once, but forever. So the next time a woman distances herself from you, don't panic, smile, because that distance is her way of showing you exactly where you need to grow. And when you rise from it stronger, calmer, and more focused, she'll feel that shift in her bones. And once a woman feels that kind of strength from a man, she never forgets it. Question for you: when she pulled away, did you chase her? Or did you stay silent and let your strength speak for you? Drop your answer in the comments. If this message hit deep, like the video. Subscribe for more raw truths about female psychology and the modern man's mindset. And share this with a friend who needs to hear it tonight. Because silence, when done right, changes everything.